Hello, welcome to the Shorewood Village Trustee Candidate Forum. Welcome, Wesley Warren. On behalf of the Shorewood Women's Club, I would like to thank you for running to represent all the residents as a trustee on the Shorewood Village Board. Although this election is uncontested, the Shorewood Women's Club understands how important it is that residents get to know who is representing them on the village board. Thank you for taking the time to answer a few questions for the public. In 2015, we saw a need for a different kind of candidate forum for Shorewood. We have partnered with the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County for completely independent and professional presentation of candidates for the village of Shorewood. Since the election this year is uncontested, the League will not facilitate a forum. For this reason, we have switched up the format to something less formal. Shorewood Women's Club has a long history of contributing to the life of the village in various ways. Our support of the Shorewood Public Library has stretched from the beginning days of helping create a library from a few shelves of books to opening a physical library in Capitol Drive in what is now City Market. Our continuing work helps fund the Shorewood Foundation, the Seed Foundation, and scholarships for students graduating from Shorewood High School, as well as scholarships for students attending the UWM and MATC. We are proud of our role in making Shorewood a vibrant place to live, grow, and learn, and we thank you for your role in that as well.
Well, thank you for all that you've done as well. So,
again, we will be asking a series of 8 questions, and you'll be given 3 minutes per question.
that sounds good. Thank you.
So first question is, tell us a bit about yourself and the relevant skills that you bring to the role of village trustee.
Well, it's first of all, really thank you very much for having me. I know it's an uncontested election, but it's important that people get to know their candidates. The last time I ran, I think there were 3 forums total, and that was good. And that you could very much see the contrast between each of the candidates in that election cycle. So it's really good to be here and to be sharing information and ideas. About me, I'm a practicing attorney. I started out at Michael Best and Friedrich as a litigation associate many years ago, 23 years ago or so. And I've been at Northwestern Mutual for going on 20 years now with their insurance products and operations team. And as you practice for longer and longer and build those legal skills, really your job becomes more about problem solving. As much as you have a technical legal skill that you built over the course of, I graduated law school in 2002. Your job is really to help the clients come to you with the tough problems, and you help to solve the tough problems. And really the reason why I'm running is that I think I can bring that skill set to the board. The other thing I like to pride myself on is a collaborative work environment. At Northwestern Mutual, we have a very stable workforce, and that is wonderful. It means you work with the same people day in and day out. So I always try to bring a collaborative approach. You obviously need to kind of stand up for your principles and what you believe in, but you need to do it in a way that allows you to work together and progress the ball forward. I find a lot of times, whether it's in politics here or at work, we're all trying to get to the same place, and the question is just how do you get there? So that's really why the special skill set I think I bring to the board. We'll probably get into this in the interview, but I think there are challenges that Shorewood's going to face from a lot of different angles in the next 3 years. And I look forward to helping the board and the community work through those challenges.
Great. Okay, next question. Why did you decide to run again for trustee, and tell us briefly what you think are the top priorities for village residents?
Sure, I decided to run again. I've always had a passion for the village. I grew up on the north side of Milwaukee. I bussed into Shorewood. I went to Atwater, SIS, then SHS, and I've always loved Shorewood. I've always loved the values that Shorewood brings. And as soon as I bought a house, I think it was February of '06, because it was a snowstorm. This was my introduction to my house. My first house, and presumably my only house, is going to be here in Shorewood. It's a village that I cherish being in, and I enjoy everything that Shorewood brings. Now, in terms of priorities for the village, I think of it in 3 buckets. The first is kind of fiscal responsibility. And part and parcel of that, I think, is all of the affordable housing initiatives we talked about. If we don't do our job in terms of fiscal responsibility and in keeping the village affordable, it's hard to conquer the affordable housing problem. It also leads to a lack of economic diversity. So I think that's the first thing I think about is that fiscal responsibility. The second thing I think about is I love how old Shorewood is. I love that everything looks completely different. I love that my house is 120 years old or so, but kind of part and parcel of that is, when you have aging infrastructure like our streetlights, like Oakland Avenue, you have to plan to fix them, and you have to stagger. There's not all the money in the world, so you have to stagger and prioritize what needs fixing. And over the next 3 years, we're going to have a lot of planning and prioritization that needs to take place. And the third thing that I identify as a key component is maintaining Shorewood's value and emphasis on diversity and inclusion. And I think this is more of a macro point. We've all seen what's happened in Washington, and we all see the environment we're in America. And I think that we as a community can do our part to make sure that we include everyone, we make everyone feel valued, and we make everyone feel like this is a community they belong to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. TIFs. TIFs, maintaining green space, building on public parking lots or at the DPW lot, and affordable housing have been hot topics. Please share your thoughts about development in Shorewood.
Shorewood, it's funny. I was my time on the board. All the TIFs had already been opened, and we actually closed one. So it's never really an issue that's come before me. Shorewood is always a challenge. We're a fully built-out community. So when you think about where can you put housing that would be affordable, you think about some of the public lots. You think about the potential DPW site, and some of those. They're all difficult, but some of them are more difficult than others. I think we also need to be cognizant of the fact that Shorewood loves its walkability, loves its green spaces, and there's just only so much real estate here. When I was knocking doors, I knocked over 1,000 doors in the first election cycle. I think it's about right. And one of the things I did hear about was people don't want. I think they called it like a. When you go out in Oakland, and now the word's escaping me, but the buildings got so tall that you have to have this tunneling effect. People don't want that. They don't want everything completely built up, so you lose some of the green space, you lose some of kind of the beauty of this. So you really have to balance it. I think that in terms of development and in terms of affordable housing and thinking about those things, it has to be the right project. And that sounds generic, but I know that those funds have been sitting out there. I voted on them in 2020, 2021, and it feels like a long time. It felt like a long time to me as I participated in the CDA. But we had a meeting, I want to say a few weeks ago, and actually this is kind of par for the course. This takes time, and it takes time, and it takes input from the community on what we want to do. So, that's a very long way of answering that anything that we do in terms of TIFs, affordable housing, further development, and impacting our green space, it needs to be a stakeholder process. It needs to be a community stakeholder process. It does not need to be done by a few people sitting in a room and saying this is how it's going to work. So we want to engage as many people in the process as possible, and make sure that we make the right decision there. Sometimes that's sometimes why the decisions take a little longer. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I pride myself on listening to the proposals around that, but in order for me to say yes, those are big deal decisions, and we need to identify the right decision for the community.
Okay, great, thank you. What do you feel is the appropriate balance between the needs of current residents, safe streets, and maintaining village character versus the desire to create more density and additional affordable housing?
That's an interesting question. I always say if people don't feel safe within their community, you're kind of failing at your number one job. It really doesn't matter if people, all the other stuff doesn't seem to matter that much if people don't feel safe within their community. So I really think that's our first and foremost priority. If you're talking about, if you accomplish those types of things, I think you move on to what makes sense in terms of, as I was saying before, what makes sense in terms of development? What makes sense in terms of, does it make sense to build in the DPW site? Does it make sense to build on one of the lots over there? But again, I've realized, through my first through my first term and a half that it's a slow process, and it's something where when you make changes, changing parking, for instance, authorizing a TID, spending the affordable housing dollars, it's just something that people need to discuss time and again in order to get to a comfort level. I really honestly believe, and I've learned this through my time at Northwestern Mutual, the best decisions are the ones made by a lot of people. People tend to, if people come together and discuss things, sure, it can get frustrating at times. And sure, you might not get, I might say, and I'm not saying this, I might say I want to build a skyrise over there. And then, but people come up with other ideas and you think to yourself, no, that's a much better idea. And to be clear, I'm not saying I want a skyrise in Shorewood. Very, very clear. But all these kind of big ideas around TIFs, TIDs, affordable housing, they're slow, drawn-out processes for a reason. And Shorewood, frankly, and part of the reason I'm here is that it's an active community. It's a really talented community. You want those people in the room to help you make decisions. I'm a life insurance lawyer. I have a certain skill set, but there's so many people with different skill sets who can help contribute to these decisions around, safe streets, density, affordable housing, maintaining green spaces, maintaining walkability, which is another really important value for this community. So I would say, and I realize I'm getting good time here, I would say that it's very important to involve stakeholders in these very big ticket items that we're talking about.
Okay. In your opinion, has the village done a good job with long-term planning for replacing aging infrastructure like sewers, streetlights, the Atwater groins/piers, Atwater bluff erosion, and damage caused by stormwater runoff, including the potential of a sinkhole like the costly one in Whitefish Bay? What more can the village be doing to be prepared financially for these big ticket items?
That's a good question. I would say that you can always do more to plan, but there's always going to be things that come out of nowhere. In my first term, we had planned to do Oakland, I think it was 2019 or 2020. The pandemic hit us. We could not close down Oakland Avenue and hurt the businesses further. So it got pushed off till, I believe, 2024, 2025. Then we had Lake Drive and Downer. So Oakland again can't get done because you can't shut down every major thoroughfare in Shorewood. And so now we're looking at 2026 or 2027, I think it's 2027. So there's a lot of planning that can be done, and we go through a long-range financial planning process every fall, and I think that's well done. But there's always going to be those variables that you can't anticipate for, which is frankly why you need a long-range financial plan to say, if you need to tweak it in some way, and you need to think about things differently, you're able to do that. You need to get very good estimate on costs. You need to know what you can and can't move, and you need to identify the priorities that absolutely have to get done. For instance, now for me, going back to Oakland, I live close to Oakland, so I walk down the street sometimes, and it's in rough shape. There's a bike path that I don't know how you ride a bike down without falling off of it. So I think that as part of that process, you really need to say, this is priority number one, this is priority number two, and if something comes up, we're gonna have to move these things around. I think the other factor that's gonna be in play here, especially over the next 4 years, is working with the federal and local government. I'm not sure, working with the federal and state government. I'm not sure what kind of downstream impacts we're going to see. I don't think anyone is. So it is going to be important to be nimble in terms of how we respond to challenges. So I do think that the village does a nice job of financially planning and budget cycle, which is in the fall. But again, there are a lot of variables that we can't quite anticipate, and we need to make sure that we have completely prioritized, A, B, C, in case something comes up to change that financial plan.
Okay. With a tight budget and many upcoming expenses like streetlight replacement, the village is looking for new revenue streams. In your opinion, where should the village look to balance the budget? For example, increase taxes, fees, for what? Cutting services, which ones? Adding parking meters on Oakland, etc.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think, Shorewood is one of, I think it's 5 taxing authorities, and I would say that, in terms of tax rate, we really need to keep, you never want to say before you take office, I'm taking this completely off the table, but I want to keep taxes affordable.
Mhm.
I remember we had talked about, when I was first on the board, of wheel tax. We had talked about parking meters, very specifically. And at the time, there really was no appetite to do that, especially given the pandemic and not wanting to impact businesses. But I think that as we get tighter budgets, be it from aging infrastructure or federal and state authorities not being able to assist as much, and as some of that money from Build Back Better kind of goes away, you have to look at every option. Again, taxes, I think taxes are tough because they're already so high. Looking at service fees is something else you do. Part of my issue is I really want to consider very strongly whether we need to have a really good conversation on wheel taxes and parking meters. They're very much, I view them as very much a regressive tax. So if you're going to do something like that in order to raise revenue, it's something where they need to be heavily considered, and we need to understand the downstream impact. And is it something that we really want to pursue? Again, my first time on the board, it was I think it was 1 or 2 meetings, and it was a complete non-starter. But I think there have been more and more substantive conversations around those things, because we really are. We have a lot of projects to do, and this is a very, very high tax community, and we have the unpredictability going on at the federal level.
Right. Okay. In its role representing residents, the village board provides oversight and gives residents a voice in village decision-making. Do you believe that the current board structure, volunteer committees, and other avenues for resident input are working? How could communication be improved?
I think they're working. I mean, I guess I don't want to speak out of turn, because I don't serve on every resident committee. I think we can make them work better, and I think we can pull more people into the process. I think sometimes you tend to see a lot of the same faces, and I think it's very good to have turnover and to have more people offering ideas in those roles. I do think the committee structure works, or it worked when I was a trustee, it worked the first time around. So I don't have an issue with it in general, but I do think there are, in the interests of full transparency, there are opportunities for improvement. I think you have such an impassioned citizenry, number of residents in Shorewood, that I do think that there's an opportunity to leverage more of that talent. And again, I would just always encourage, in terms of communication, we need to find a better way to go out and say, hey, there's this opportunity, and you'd be great for it. Or, hey, you're new to the community, and I realize you're not connected, but your skill set's exactly what we need on the library board. So I think that in terms of publicity, we need to get better at putting these opportunities out there. And we see a lot of the same people. They're very good people, but I think we can better publicize, hey, there's the opportunity on this board or this board, and make sure that we continue to observe things like, I think there are term limits, things like that, where you get new people kind of in the process, creating different and better ideas on driving this community forward.
Great, thank you. Last question. Please tell us what you love about Shorewood and what you hope for its future.
That's almost the toughest question here. I remember when I bussed into Shorewood, and I took 2 buses to get here. I took the 63 and the 15, and I took those every day until, well, there was the yellow bus until I think 7th grade, and then every day I would take the 63 and the 15. And I knew that when I got here, I didn't want to leave. It's a great community. It's grown more diverse. It's inclusive. It values things like education. I'm a Shorewood alum. I've served on several different school committees, and it's really great the values that this community has. I never want that to change. I feel like every meeting that I sit in here, I learn something. So I guess what I've always cherished about Shorewood is first off kind of that value, that inclusion, the increasing diversity. I really love that. And then some of the more structural things that everyone talks about. It's walkable.
Mhm.
I don't like driving. I just don't. I love the fact that I can walk to shops on Oakland. I love the fact that we're a multi-generational community. I love the diversity of people and the diversity of thought that you have here, or that we have here. It's just it's a community where I knew the second I purchased my house in 2006 that it was my forever home. I'm not leaving. I don't want to leave Shorewood. So it's kind of one of those love stories that spans going all the way back into I guess when did I first come here? It would have been 82, 83, 84, somewhere in there. And it's just gone through the test of time. And it's an honor to be able to serve in this role. It truly has been an honor of a lifetime, and I'm humbled by the fact that Shorewood gives me this opportunity, every other Monday to help make decisions, and to talk to get to know all these amazing people as we make those decisions together.
Great, thank you so much. Well, that's the end of our questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think those were great questions, and it's great to. I feel like one of the important things and one of the challenges of this election cycle has just been being transparent. And I'm so glad that there have been some opportunities to get the word out there. And I think that as I answered your questions, one of the things that strikes me is it's tough to put a stake in the ground and say this or that or the other thing. These are I'm not a big fan in saying I'm gonna do this and I'm not gonna change my mind. I work for you. At the end of the day, we have to make the best decisions together. And I think that the important part is have an openness to other ideas. I'll always bring my values and I'll always let my values kind of drive my decisions, but it's also very important to not foreclose things and to be open to hearing feedback. When you talk about big things like TIFs, affordable housing, green spaces, walkability, you always want to talk about those things with a lot of people, because we have a lot of wonderful people in this community, and I really look forward to working with them over the next 3 years.
Great, thank you so much.